Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the official Neo Tokyo podcast, Interlinked.
Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
I am your host, Nick, alongside with Jared. We'll be diving into a slew of different topics, including all of the different legal cases that have recently been dropped, some of the new advancements in OpenAI, but just as really an example of some of the advancements that are going on with AI with the image generating. So a lot of fun stuff to dive into. We might even wander into some waters that have not occurred to me yet. But Jared, let's kick it off. There's been a lot happening on the legal side. As the lawyer, please tell us what's going on.
So I don't remember if I have ever seen anything like this. So I also have never seen anything like Gary Gensler and the SEC go after crypto as much as they did. So that was very unprecedented in my mind. Sort of if you had, get away, bug. If you had a crypto company, then you're going to get some type of enforcement action from the SEC. Just period. If you're operating in the US, maybe even if you're not operating in the US, we're going to do it anyway, just for good measure. And then Gensler's out. Mark Ueda is your new acting commissioner or chairman. So now we've got Coinbase, which is the biggest, they put up the biggest fight. They're like, hey, we've agreed with the SEC. We didn't do anything wrong. We're out. Ripple, they had an appeal that was coming up. They're not going to appeal that case. Kraken, they've agreed. Gemini, Robinhood, Yuga Labs. That was, I thought that one was going to be very interesting because, they had the ape token and how does that, affect Neo Tokyo, right? I mean, I think that's a very, very close sort of analogy. We don't have a game, but, I think pretty close to that as far as that ecosystem. And Consensus, MetaMask, that's a big one. OpenSea, Cumberland, Crypto.com, Tornado Cash, although we still have the criminal case for that. So all of a sudden just wiped out. So you brought up a great question. Is this good for crypto? I mean, I think it's a good place to start. I mean, what do you think, Nick? So you start with, we're going to attack it and we're going to get some resolution. And then all of a sudden, nothing. And now we have no guidance whatsoever. So is it open season? Are we back on? I don't know. What do you think? I mean, what is your take on that? If that clean slate?
I think what the market really likes is clarity. And while not having all of these cases compared to having all of these legal cases is by definition bullish, especially around all of these high profile Coinbase, Consensus, yada, yada, yada. That's obviously very good for the space. What I'm concerned about is the lack of regulatory framework, unless one is hammered out, is going to still cause some pause because Trump has one term, hopefully. And Trump hopefully has one term. As I don't know. This will be proof that I'm in a simulation for me personally, because I've just been obsessed with Roman history and Caesar since I was like a little kid. So if I am alive for some sort of second Caesar situation going on, I don't know. That's some sort of like karmic synergy there. But really, like the other piece that concerns me is there should 100% be some things that are not allowed in crypto. Like some of these flagrant scams, some of these meme coins with super, super predatory like tokenomics. Now, maybe that's all handled in disclosures. And as long as, the proper disclosures are released, like maybe I'm cool with that. But we kind of saw just a giant continued proliferation of like, okay, we can do whatever we want. And a lot of the stuff that people want to do isn't necessarily good for getting retail involved. What about you, Jared? What do you think about that?
So I agree. I mean, I think we need, and look, Trump certainly asked for Congress to come back in 6 months with some type of outline for their regulation. We'll see what that looks like. That's going to take a while to get sort of involved. A lot of these, I think, I'm in a way glad that the SEC has dropped them. So, like Yuga Labs, I mean, what are they doing? It's all an ecosystem coin. You use ape for things inside the ecosystem, other all the things that they have, right? To me, that was a little silly that they brought that. Same with OpenSea. OpenSea to me is just the seller. There's no OpenSea coin. They don't, they're sitting there as a marketplace. So are we attacking marketplaces now? And then obviously Coinbase, again saying that those certain 7 tokens like Solana, XRP, all the things that they said were securities, I'm assuming are now not securities, but we don't know for sure. They didn't say we're good, here's what to do. They just said we're not going to continue the lawsuit, which obviously causes some type of problems. I would think in the long run, if you don't have some type of regulation to back that up. So, but it is better than Gensler saying, you have to register. Okay, here's my documentation to register. Oh, we don't take registrations. Oh, yeah, now you're sued because you didn't register. It's like the literal definition of gaslighting at the level of the federal government. And then you've got Trump token, Melania token comes out, and it's like, well, that's interesting. I'm like, let's see where this leads. And all of a sudden, the SEC, it's like wide open. So it's interesting from my perspective. I would have liked to have seen some guidance, at least so that I can say, here's where we are. As we are now, I'm like, sort of do whatever you want until the regulation comes down, and then we see where it lands. As long as, like you're saying, you don't have pump and dump schemes. You're not, doing this predatory meme coin that comes out where your friends are dropping on people, and you're saying, oh well, here's all the things we're going to do with the token, and then you end up buying watches and Lamborghinis, and they're yours, and they don't go to the project. I mean, that's blatantly illegal. If you do something other than that, and it's just a token that you come out with in your own ecosystem, seems fair game to me today. I mean, I would say, why not? Now, do we know for sure? No. But based on the current regulation we have with Ripple that actually had a case and just won't get appealed, then, I think there's some guidance there at least, but not as much as we would like.
Yeah, and I think it's going to create a high uncertainty moment if we look forward to, 2028, which feels like a far way away, but as we've learned in crypto, 2021 feels like just yesterday, which is when I got into the crypto space. So 2028 comes along. Now crypto is so ingrained into Trump's branding, from the meme coins, both from him and the first lady, from the bullish policy, the Bitcoin strategic reserve, um, that if we see a reversal in the population's opinions and they go over and we get a left, let's say a left landslide in 2028, they could come with pitchforks and, sort of burn crypto at the stake. Now, depending on how well of a job Trump and his administration does, maybe Vance or one of the people from like the right end up going in, and maybe it's, 4 more years or 8 more years of fun time in crypto. If Trump goes full Caesar, then it might be indefinite time where it's bullish in crypto, and there might be Trump in the strategic reserve, which
Right.
I certainly hope is not the case. But yeah, certainly is going to create another sort of high uncertainty moment if there's not more regulation given.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how he can bring Congress together, because this is, I think, a bipartisan issue, um, for or against crypto, right? I mean, you'll have people on both sides, so you've got to get enough of the senators and representatives together to pass some type of at least an outline of generally where we're going to place crypto, who's going to regulate it, and then get it into the hands of the regulators to start making rulemaking. And then once there's a law, I mean, we're good. I mean, I think that's fine. I don't think that's going to be any issue. And then you'll have cases brought by the SEC, or even cases between crypto companies that'll sort of give further clarity on that regulation, and sort of fine tune it. I mean, that's typically the way it's worked over the past, and it's been fine. I mean, I know we have like the code of federal regulation is like the most insane document ever if you look at all of them. But, at a minimum, at least we'll have some outline. I think that'll get passed within the next, say, 2 years. And if that gets done, then he's done what he was supposed to do for crypto. And then hopefully we can sort of march on with, hey, here's the outline, here's what we're doing. And then anything beyond that, we'll get sort of clarity as the cases pile up.
Yeah. Another interesting headline I saw today was around Larry Fink's statements around the US dollar. And if Trump and the administration and the Treasury don't play this right and the Fed, you could end up losing the US dollar's dominance to Bitcoin. Now, I didn't read more than that. That was the headline. So if I misunderstood it, sorry, Mr. Fink. I know you're a loyal Interlinked podcast viewer. So my apologies. Don't kill me. But I mean, he's talking his own book. Like he's got a huge sort of position in Bitcoin being able to continue to succeed. But it's an interesting another variable out there is like, how's the US dollar going to do? How much of this institutional sovereign wealth fund treasury sort of becomes contagious? And do we hit that sort of critical mass point where, Bitcoin could become something that really like erodes at the US dollar? Now, obviously that would have huge geopolitical implications. And obviously the president of El Salvador will be able to do some pretty great victory laps. But another kind of like crazy variable that's out there that, you can't imagine a major institution saying just a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they screw up and have some type of event where we default on some type of loans, which I mean, we've had that come up to the limit multiple times over the past few years where they had to pass, new budgets and, extend the debt ceiling to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I mean, our debt payments, I forgot what percentage it is, but it's extremely high of our GDP that we are paying. And that's only going to get higher. I mean, unless Trump does some sort of U-turn and we have we don't have a deficit this year, we have a surplus, which I wouldn't think happens, but we would have to have a surplus probably for decades to get anywhere near where the debt would be manageable. And I do not see that happening. So if we ever have a moment like that where we default, then yeah, I mean, I think the sort of the next logical step would be, okay, well, if, we can't trust the US because they're defaulting on their loans. And, what's the next logical currency to use? Would it be the euro? Probably not. Would it be, like you're saying, a digital asset like Bitcoin? Maybe so. And that to me is like, because there's no one controlling it. So that obviously would be the choice logically. Now, whether a country lets that happen or all the countries lets that happen, boy, that would be a wild moment for the world, but we'll see. But, I think, if we ever screw that up, I mean, it's a valid point that Larry said, shout out Larry. Make sure you get on as a guest next time and we'll go through it. But to paraphrase, you said it and now it's like we have this opportunity, let's not screw it up. So let's hope that the Treasury and the Fed and Trump work together to make sure that we don't come to a moment where we have some type of default that really affects the dollar, because that's going to screw lots of things up globally.
Yeah, and I think part of this tariff negotiation could potentially come down to US dollar strength and the bonds. What I mean by that is obviously Trump has been really enjoying this giant tariff stick that he's been whacking all across the planet. Part of that, I think, could be to use this leverage to try and get countries to have some of their reserves or more of their reserves in the dollar. That seems to have been sort of like fading as of late. Also, we need big buyers of our bonds, which is what's funding all of this debt. So I wonder how much that's coming into conversation of like, do you want a 25% tariff on automobiles or do you want to buy more of our bonds? And like, some of the other things that are at play. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how this plays out.
Now a word from our sponsors.
What's up, crypto gamers? Shout out to our sponsor, Myria. Myria is revolutionizing Ethereum based gaming with its powerful L2 scaling solution. Think zero gas fees, instant transactions, free NFT minting, and more. Myria offers a suite of tools that are tailor built for game development, including game specific SDKs, a specced out marketplace, Web3 spiked leaderboards, new AI super tools, and more. All this fueled by a fleet of player run nodes that are a breeze to operate and pump out daily rewards for supporting the ecosystem. Plus, check out Meta Rush, the Battle Royale obstacle runner by Myria Studios, dropping very, very soon.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So I believe it was Hyundai that's building a couple $1 billion plant here in Louisiana. So I think Hyundai is like the poster child that he was using. That's, hey, we've got these plants here in the U.S. I know I forgot where I traveled recently. So it was actually to North Carolina. As we're driving through, and there's these massive, I think it was Kia and Hyundai plants that are just pumping out cars. So the tariffs on them, aren't gonna be aren't at all, because they're essentially built here. Even though the money goes back somewhere else, they're here in the U.S. And that new plant certainly helps Louisiana. That's going to be a huge couple $1 billion investment here. I believe Trump is the one that actually announced it, which is
With the
interesting.
Hyundai team.
Yeah, it was Hyundai. Okay, and so
They were together. It was at the White House.
yeah, and I have somebody that I know is on the port commission here. It's going to help the port commission. Local construction companies are going to be building this plant, so that's a big boon. Now, I'm assuming that some of that had to do with these tariffs, or at least Trump is going to say that had to do with the tariffs. My guess is that plant was already in idea and production ahead of time, because it's not like you're just going to invest a couple $1 billion and you have a plant and a site already set up ahead of time. That's going to take years. But maybe we'll see a little bit more investment that's obviously his plan, if his plan comes to fruition, and we'll have, a growing manufacturing sort of sector that we haven't had in decades. It would be interesting. Now, how does that affect the debt? I would imagine if that's done properly, we wouldn't have to export as many things, and perhaps that would lower the overall deficits that we have every year. And we really just need to have a surplus a few years. I think last time was Clinton, I believe, is when that happened. And I remember I was like, why can't we do that every year?
Yeah.
And then the government grows, and then COVID happened, and then it, just went out of control after that.
Yeah. And really started in like '08 of just like this, sort of shrugged off like recession that we were able to do with just extreme quantitative easing. And then the tax cuts play a big part in that as well. There is spending and there is revenue. And if you take a hatchet to taxes, you are by definition expanding the deficit, all things equal. So,
yeah. Oh, for sure.
To shift gears again, one of the things that I've been absolutely addicted to since it started to make waves across the internet, I think late last week, was the new update on ChatGPT on its image generating. It obviously kicked off a firestorm across Twitter where everyone was putting things in the Ghibli version. Also, apologies to the anime community if I'm not pronouncing that right. I've only read it. But Ghibli was just the one that really like took off on the internet. But I was fucking around doing things in like One Piece style, the Addams Family style, any sort like Rugrat or Rocket Power, Rugrats, Lilo and Stitch. It's crazy. And it's like the people that are getting in early on this stuff, like the leverage is insane. So one tiny personal example, Ben, who is currently out of town right now, as he's not on the pod, but we went back in August to CJI when we were all out at Rare Evo, the grappling tournament or jiu-jitsu tournament. And one of the guys wins $1 million. I snapped a picture of it. This is one of the top grapplers in our space, and did a Dragon Ball Z edit. Maybe took me like 30 minutes, 6 or 7 different images generated till I found one I liked. And then, shared that on Instagram, tagged him and his team, and like he reposted it. And up until a week ago, I had no sort of artistic ability that enabled me to reach out and like poke somebody that, as from a social media standpoint, is many, many tiers above me. And as like a grappler, like I look up to and like watch his matches and stuff. So really, really it felt like a watershed moment for AI in the media space where like even, the graphic designers, like they were hurting this week. Like it was definitely a Last Samurai kind of feel where, I think there is something sad to like watching skills that people have developed or, investments of their time that the value has been eroded. People can highly debate how much it's been eroded, but it seems hard to argue that it's not been. And yeah, no, it's been really, really cool to see that come in. On the flip side, like at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in like human beings have to be adaptable. And if back in the day when you were in a hunter-gatherer, sometimes the buffalo move and you can't just pound your hands on the ground and wish the buffalo didn't move or you're gonna fucking starve to death. So you better follow the buffalo, adopt these tools, learn these tools. But for someone like me who was many, many, many decades behind the curve, to be able to like come in and take some creative ideas and turn them into, art is really exciting.
Oh, it's fun too. I forgot my son and I were creating a walrus pug Pepe combination. We were like, I think we were gonna do some meme coin or something. We never really did, but man, the stuff that gets pumped out of AI, it's incredible. You can just change a couple things, and it's like the ideas and the flow. It's so quick, and it's so amazing. I mean, to me, it's really going to hurt sort of, like the Fivers and you go out and you're like, hey, I need this logo or this whatever. It's like, I mean, I just created on AI. It will take me 30 seconds and it'll be exactly what I want. And then you can change the style and in a little bit, add, change things. And it's perfect. I mean, honestly, it's like, oh, I never thought of that. It's beautiful. And but you're right. It's gonna have people scrambling in that space to either differentiate themselves as to why you would hire them and not use AI, or use AI and then sort of, change it to kind of start with the idea. Certainly lower prices. I mean, that's inevitable. But I think that's sort of inevitable with any any service that's going to have AI come in, including lawyers. I mean, we're not immune to that. Every time I have a CLE about AI, the quote is AI is not going to replace lawyers. Lawyers who use AI are going to replace lawyers who don't. That's sort of the quote. And I was like, that makes sense. I like it. It's a good way to, kind of push us to be using it. We use it all the time, and I think it certainly saves time and saves money. It allows us to help more people, I guess, at the end of the day. So that's the way I think you would have to look at it in this instance. But man, it's fun. Like all the different styles you can do are amazing. And you know, I'm not sure about the intellectual property issues. Like for instance, Lilo and Stitch. I mean, is that a copyrightable style? I would think so. But you can use that. Whereas I remember before, if you said something similar to that in Chat GPT, it would say, I can't create that because that's that's a copyrighted image. And now it's sort of free reign. I'm curious as to how they think they're getting around that, and what the intellectual property ramifications are. And I think that's going to be kind of interesting too.
Yeah, that was the topic of discussion at a dinner party I was at last night. Some really close friends, some really smart people. And, we were discussing like how that's going to be handled. When do you come like when do you cross the line of something that could be suable for copyright infringement? I mean, I was just including in all my prompts at the end saying go right up until the line of where you're violating copyright policy and including that in my prompts. Plus, like as far as enforcement goes, like maybe you can get ChatGPT or OpenAI and like Grok and all the big players to like regulate it, but so much of this is open source. It's being run locally on machines. It's being integrated into different platforms where you're setting the policies. So I mean, once this genie comes out of the bottle, and plus you could be, I mean, what happens if I go, hey, I want you to take 30% Lilo and Stitch, 30%, One Piece, 30% Ghibli, 10% Rocket Power. That sounds like it's going to be weird, but just as an example, like, then how does that sort of get handled in copyright law? I think the big conclusion from our dinner party last night, at least mine was, I don't know what's going to happen, but the lawyers are going to make a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. So you can't copyright an image that's created solely by AI. That's already been established, a couple of years ago. I forgot the prompting of that. And so, when does an open source software infringe on your style, and is it an infringement of your style? Is it a fair use? Because it really depends on what you're using it for. Let's say you use that and then you start selling, Lilo and Stitch look-alike lawyer plushies. That's probably some type of infringement. But what if you just use it and you stick it, on Facebook and you're sending a meme? It's probably fair use, right? I mean, so I guess really the bottom line is how much commercial revenue and how much in the commercial space is that copyrighted infringed image going to be used, and what is it used for, and do you get any revenue out of that? And I think that's going to be sort of the determining factor, because certainly Disney has lots of goodwill within the fact that they created this style. There's no other style like it. Same thing with each individual one. There's somebody that has created that and owned it, and I think with the Ghibli style, I think there's the artist is still alive, so that is still covered under his copyright. And is it a specific image or is it a style? And I would say that the style is clearly his. The internet knows it's his, so that's a very you can't get confused about who created that. So I think that's kind of going to be where that runs into. But that's fascinating. It's fun. I mean, this is great.
Yeah, and I think like it's really going to highlight, and I think Ben identified this really early, which is IP is going to become king. In a
Mhm.
world where anyone can spin up high quality. I mean, for instance, I went from not having any skills, being able to, besides having used ChatGPT for other uses, and I'd fooled around with AI, so I understood the prompting. But I went from generating my first images, taking an image of a couple of my friends, uploading it, falling in love with these two characters, the like Ghibli version of these two, and then tweaking the theme a little bit and making an entire comic book in 2.5 hours, like a little, and by entire comic book, I mean 10 pictures. But the fact that I could do that is insane with that little like amount of having like that a little amount of knowledge going into it. And then the next step I'm exploring is you can animate each one of those images. And it's a little clunky right now, but I don't know if it's the next update or the one after that, but you're going to be able to crank out anyone who's got creativity and knows how to make this application sing or these applications sing are going to be able to make their own animes.
Yeah, that to me that's kind of cool too. And it's almost like, all right, let's say I owned that style. Would it hurt me if there were everyone on the earth is using it, or would it only help? Because to me, it's kind of like, hey, I wonder where that came from. Maybe let's look at that original work of art. That might be something that's cool style. That might be something that I want to look into and watch. And to me, I think that's something where, the actual producer and the owner is going to have to sort of change that mindset instead of maybe protection, protection, protection. It's like open source, open source, open source. Because it's all going to come back at the end of the day. Somebody somewhere is going to be like, I want to watch that. What is it? Let me see. And then you're like, oh, this is great. I love this. And then that sort of, and maybe another round of people enjoying, all of your content. And that's, quite interesting. I know my oldest son draws a lot, and he hasn't done it in a while, but he will use AI all the time to create things, and he doesn't draw as much. So that may be a negative, right? I mean, so this is gonna prompt me to go home and be like, hey, do you still like drawing? I'm just curious. I don't care if you want to draw. It's great. If not, learn AI. That may even be a better tool. I don't know. You probably make more money doing it that way, especially
Yeah,
going forward.
I'm sure there were many of people that when they saw the first person pick up a paintbrush were like, why am I painting with my finger? And this seems like the next evolution of that. No, really exciting stuff. So shorter episode today. You have anything else that you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think that was, man, that's a lot. I mean, a lot's going on, and let's all pray for the price of ETH, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, it needs an exorcism, dude. Yeah, if I'm sure the Pope is also a viewer of Interlink, so if you could perform a religious exorcism on ETH, that would be greatly appreciated. But also is greatly appreciated, Jared. Always love co-hosting, always love these episodes. So really appreciate it. Big shout out to the audience for joining us today, and we will be back next week with another episode of Interlinked, and we'll have a guest on that episode. So looking forward to another one of those. Thanks, everybody, and
Awesome.
have a wonderful rest of y'all's week.